Have you ever just felt like your brain is running on a completely different operating system than everybody else's? Like you've spent your whole life feeling maybe a little too intense, or way too sensitive, or just kind of out of sync? Well, if that sounds familiar, this one's for you. We're going to dive into some of the hidden habits of the autistic brain that might just make everything click.
So picture this. You're in that room, everybody else is just chatting, totally at ease. But you are manually calculating how much eye contact to make, you're trying to read between the lines of every single sentence, and you're desperately trying to ignore the buzz from the overhead lights that apparently no one else can even hear. It's not just tiring, right? It is completely and utterly draining.
For years, maybe you were told you're just shy, or you're being difficult, or you're just weird. But here's the big question, the one that changes everything. What if these struggles aren't personality flaws at all? What if they're actually consistent, scientifically documented signs of an autistic brain?
Yeah, because this isn't about your character, this is about neurology. We're talking about a brain that is fundamentally wired differently. It's like a unique operating system that processes the entire world with its own very specific set of rules.
So let's start with how that operating system actually experiences the physical world around it. This first set of habits is all about what it takes to navigate an environment that just feels louder, brighter, and way more intense than it does for most other people.
First up is what you could call the sensory storm. See, for a neurotypical brain, background stuff, like a humming fridge or the scratchy tag on your shirt, it just kind of fades into the background. It gets filtered out automatically. But for an autistic brain, that filter is often missing. Every single sound, every texture, every smell can register at full volume, all of them screaming for your attention.
And what's really wild here is just the sheer difference in scale. This has nothing to do with being overly sensitive. This is a profound neurological reality. It means your nervous system is processing a massive amount of sensory data all the time without that automatic filter. It's like living in a constant, overwhelming flood of information.
Next up, let's talk about the need for routine. And I don't mean just liking a schedule. For an autistic mind, an unexpected change, like a friend canceling plans last minute, or even just a detour on your drive home, it doesn't feel like a minor inconvenience. No, it can feel like the actual ground is shifting beneath your feet. It can trigger real, genuine panic. So while society might look at that and label it as being inflexible or controlling, the neurological reality is something else entirely. Routine isn't just a preference, it is a vital tool. It creates emotional safety, and it seriously reduces the massive cognitive load it takes to exist in a world that feels incredibly, ridiculously unpredictable.
So what happens when that unpredictable world just gets to be too much? Well, the nervous system tries to regulate itself. And this is where stimming comes in. Those repetitive movements like bouncing your leg, or pacing around the room, or clicking a pen. It's a totally natural response to feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or even super happy.
But a lot of us are taught to suppress these things, right? To just sit still. The perception is that it's a problem that needs to be fixed. But the reality, stimming is a brilliant, absolutely essential regulatory tool. And when you suppress that natural need, it only leads to higher stress and burnout, because you're literally denying your nervous system the one thing it needs to find its balance. Okay, now let's shift gears and look at how this all plays out in the social world. This is where we run into what you might call the social puzzle, that immense cognitive energy it takes to do what for other people seems like a simple conversation. I mean, just think about this. How many hours of your life have you spent replaying a conversation from yesterday, trying to figure out what they really meant? Or how about mentally rehearsing a phone call you have to make later? This scripting and replaying isn't about being insecure. It's about manually calculating all the stuff, the tone, the subtext, the intentions, that other people just seem to get automatically.
And a huge reason for this is a tendency to process language literally. The autistic brain often starts with the dictionary definition of words. So things like sarcasm or common idioms or vague instructions, they don't just land automatically. All that social subtext has to be consciously and manually translated, and that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So when you add all of this up, socializing becomes, well, it becomes metabolically expensive. You're not just having a chat. You are actively managing your eye contact. You're filtering out the background noise. You're tracking whose turn it is to talk. And you're monitoring your own behavior to seem normal. The cognitive load is enormous, which is exactly why social energy drains so incredibly fast.
And this constant effort leads us straight to masking.
And this is the big reason why so many autistic adults go completely unrecognized for decades. It's this draining four-step cycle. You study how other people act, you build a persona to blend in, you suppress all your natural instincts, and then ultimately you collapse from the sheer exhaustion of it all. This performance isn't just unsustainable, it completely disconnects you from who you really are.
All right, now let's turn inward for a bit. Because beyond the external world and all the social stuff, there's this incredibly rich and intense internal experience, one that's defined by unique passions, thoughts, and emotions.
And nothing shows this better than special interests. You know how it is. When something captures your attention, you don't just learn a little about it, you go all in. You map its entire world. Now, the perception from others might be that you're self-centered for talking about it so much, but the reality is that these interests are a deep, deep source of passion, of comfort, and even of your identity.
Now, for what might be one of the most misunderstood parts of this whole internal world, someone asks you this simple question: how do you feel? And your mind just goes blank.
You might know that your chest feels tight or your heart is racing. You can totally identify the physical sensations. But translating that raw data into a specific named emotion, like anxious or embarrassed, that is a huge struggle. This is called alexithymia. And it's not that you don't feel, oh, you feel intensely. It's just that the identification process works differently.
And because those emotions are so intense, a seemingly small trigger can lead to this huge, overwhelming reaction. People might see this and think you're being overreactive. But what the science is showing us is that it's actually a faster, more intense threat detection system in the brain. It is a documented physiological response, not some kind of character flaw.
So, if any of this, any of it at all, resonated with you, if it finally gave you words for an experience you've been carrying around your entire life, then it is time for a brand new framework.
Let's just be perfectly 100% clear about what all this means. These behaviors, these habits that we've been talking about, they are not deficits, and they are absolutely not weaknesses. So here it is, the ultimate takeaway. All of these habits, the need for routine, the sensory overload, the social scripting, they are not flaws that you need to fix. They are the visible signs of a nervous system that processes the world with incredible depth. And understanding this, that's the first step toward building a life that actually works with your neurology, not one that's constantly fighting against it. Because difference isn't a deficit, it's just a different and totally valid version of being human. If this helped you feel seen today, please consider sharing it with someone else who might need that same feeling of understanding. Thanks so much for joining me, and be sure to subscribe for more explainers that help us all make sense of our complex inner worlds.